I think we should be good to go forwards, backwards.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, here we go. So let's give the floor to Dr. Turnbull, who is a senior research data specialist at the University of Melbourne, Australia. And this is a presentation that is joint right. So it has been written together with Joy McCollum, who is a PhD candidate at the Australian Catholic University. And Dr. Robert Turnbull will speak for both. Is that correct?
That's right. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you. Thanks very much to Hugh for and the organisers for including me in this this conference. I also want to thank Christina Kreinecker for inviting me to join the Bicross project. So I'm here as part of the Bicross project funded by the EFT. Well, in 1892, Agnes Lewis found a 9th century Arabic manuscript in a basket at St. Catherine's Monastery with the translation of the epistles of Paul. This manuscript is Sinai-Arabic 155, as you see there. I'll just call it S155. 2 years later, I think this is Agnes Lewis on the left. 2 years later, her sister Margaret Gibson produced an edition of this manuscript based on photographs that they took and their subsequent visit to Sinai. Gibson provided evidence that this was a translation direct from Greek. In a brief review of Gibson's edition, Victor Reisel agreed that it was a translation from a Greek forelage, but based on a provisional comparison of 26 variation units, he concluded that the underlying Greek text was predominantly of the Byzantine type, with just traces of the Alexandrian text and some influence from the Peshitta and other Eastern versions. Later, Robert Boyd, in his 1942 dissertation at Princeton, disagreed with Reisel's conclusions. Boyd studied 63 variation units in 1 Corinthians and found that this Arabic version agreed with the Byzantine text in only 43% of the variation units, and in the remaining 57, agreed with Alexandrian or Western readings. The non-Byzantine character of this translation was so strong that Boyd believed that it must have been translated before the Hartleian version in the 7th century. He also based this conclusion on linguistic evidence. Now, I suggest that the linguistic features that Boyd observed are more convincingly attributed to the Middle Arabic used by Christian Arabic writers in the 8th and 9th centuries. So rather than interpreting the non-Byzantine readings as a sign of a pre-Islamic Arabic translation, I take them as indicators of the remarkable biblical texts circulating in local context in Palestine in the late 1st millennium. This parallels what we find in the Arabic Gospel translations of the same milieu, as I've argued elsewhere, following on from the research of Hikmat Kashua. More recently, Vivian Zeki, oh, I don't have a picture, sorry, completed a survey of the Arabic Pauline manuscript tradition and identified a handful of other manuscripts with the same translation. And in 2021, I presented a survey of the Arabic Apostolos lectionary tradition, where I found 2 extra lectionary manuscripts with this translation. These findings opened the door for a more comprehensive study of the entire manuscript tradition of this version. So my aims today are to describe the 7 witnesses of this version, then discuss the transcription of the text of Ephesians from all the surviving texts of the Arabic witnesses using the Text Encoding Initiative, XML. Then we'll discuss the intra-version relationships, exploring the relationships of the development of the text in Arabic. Then I'll discuss the collation of this Arabic version with readings of the UBS apparatus in Ephesians, and then an automatic correlation with a much larger apparatus. And then we'll move on to phylogenetic analysis, where we use these correlations to assess the place of this Arabic version in the wider transmission of Ephesians. And finally, we'll discuss just a handful of readings to illustrate the key findings of this study. Firstly, S155. The latter part of S155 from Ephesians 2:9b onwards was missing, but in 1920, this latter section was bought by the British Museum and is now at the British Library. This codex originally contained fragments now in Munich and Paris, which have excerpts of the really important Christian Arabic theological treatise or apology called the Summa Theologiae Arabica. Peter Tarras outlines the sad story of what we know of how these fragments were removed from the original manuscript at St. Catherine's and sold to different places by Frederick Grote, later considered by the monks as a pseudo-missionary, and he was once imprisoned for a few months for theft. Well, in addition to the Summa and the Pauline epistles, S155 also contains Ben Sira, which has been edited by Richard Frank. Regarding the order of the Pauline books, Hebrews is placed directly after 2nd Thessalonians. The manuscript is written very elegantly. Zaki calls it an early Abbasid bookhand. There are several archaic features of the hand which I won't discuss here, but they date the manuscript to the 9th century. Like many of the Arabic Gospel manuscripts from the same era, S155 includes rubrics, with headings here, with headings from the Old Jerusalemite lectionary calendar. So, for example, this year, at the start of Ephesians 1:1, is noted to be read on Palm Sunday. And other parts of Ephesians are read in the week shortly after Pentecost, following the Old Jerusalemite calendar. The Old Jerusalemite lectionary liturgical system is a fascinating area of study because it preserves the long history of development in Christian worship, characterized by its proximity to the actual locations where these sacred events were remembered in the liturgy. The Jerusalem Church maintained its unique liturgical identity for centuries until it was ultimately replaced by the liturgical system of Constantinople. But in the 8th and 9th centuries, this tradition was alive and well, and the sources for the Old Jerusalemite lectionary system in the epistles are only known from fragmentary sources, especially those outside of the seasons of Lent and Eastertide. And this Arabic manuscript is an important and overlooked witness in reconstructing this calendar. I'm working on an edition of and translation of these rubrics throughout this manuscript. Secondly, Sign Arabic 73. The first and last part of S73 were also taken from St. Catherine's by the pseudo-missionary Grote. These sections eventually came to the BNF in Paris. The colophon in one of the Paris fragments indicate that it was written by a scribe named David of Ashkelon. This scribe also copied Sign Arabic 309, which contains catechetical texts from Jerusalem Patriarchs Cyril and John II, and a Psalter in Sign Arabic New Finds Parchment 4. The colophon in Sign Arabic 309, I'm not sure if I said, so David of Ashkelon in this colophon mentions that he's in Jerusalem, and in another colophon he talks about writing it in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The date of the colophon here is given, and this has been interpreted several ways, but it seems now best to refer to January 918 or 919. The scribe David of Ashkelon wrote with what William Keown calls a cursive new style, used in Christian Arabic manuscripts from the 9th century onwards. Like 155, S73 also places Hebrews after 2nd Thessalonians. Like S155 again, it also has the Old Jerusalemite lectionary headings, but there are several differences throughout the manuscript. And the lectionary headings have been adapted, in my view, for the local setting of its context. So, for example, here the reading for Palm Sunday has been moved from 1:1 to 1 verse 3. Yeah. And the lectionary's headings are added to places like Ephesians 6 verse 11, which says that it's to be read for the Feast of the Martyrs, which agrees with the Georgian lectionary, which is also part of the same tradition. Updating lectionary headings and also the liturgical terminology changes throughout the headings. Updating the these lectionary headings for local use in copies of the same Arabic version parallels just what we see in Gospels from the same era. In a previous work, I identified 9 distinct lectionary systems in the 4 Arabic versions that I was looking at. And you can see how it develops and changes quite dramatically, even in copy text in the same textual tradition. So my hope is that by comparing the similar adaptations in the liturgical systems from the Gospels, we can learn more about how these 2 different manuscripts were used and adapted in the local churches of the Levant at the time. S436 is dated to the 10th century. It contains mimars from Chrysostom, Cyril of Jerusalem, and others. It contains the Catholic Acts and Catholic epistles. It only has the epistles of Paul to 1 Thessalonians 2:4. Keep going a little bit quicker. That manuscript was mentioned by Vivian Zaki in her book, but she excluded it from the analysis for some reason that was unspecified. 159 was copied by a priest at Mount Sinai in August of 199 CE. It contains Acts and the epistles, and as with other manuscripts in his family, Hebrews after 2nd Thessalonians. 160 is dated to the 13th century and contains Acts and the epistles, and Hebrews in the same place. And now we're coming to the two lectionaries. So Sinai Arabic 148 was written in the 13th century. It contains the ESK Apostolos lectionary, that's daily readings in Eastertide and Saturday and Sunday readings after that. Clark's checklist erroneously labeled, it also has a copy of the four Gospels. And I'll talk about how that was missed in the catalogues, but we'll just skip over that because we want to get more to the text. And Sinai Arabic 163 is also an ESK Apostolos lectionary for the 13th century. But it has quite a lot of differences from 148. So here's a plot of the textual similarity according to different lection days. So green, just blue at the top here is comparing Sinai Arabic 148 with one of the representative examples from 159, one of the continuous text manuscripts from the same time period. You can see it agrees quite a lot more strongly than it does in the green line, which is Sinai Arabic 163, which has lections down here, down here, down here, down here, which differ quite a lot from the standard text of this version. And there's also structural differences of the lectionaries, which I point out here. So when I first discussed this a couple of years ago, that led me to speculate that these two lectionaries derive perhaps from two separate attempts to compile ESK lectionaries from the same Arabic version. And that's what I wanted to explore in this study. So transcriptions. To further scholarly work on this version, we've produced transcriptions of Ephesians from all 7 manuscripts of using the Text Encoding Initiative standard. These transcriptions have been made through the Decodex manuscript transcription software that I'm working on. The location at the start of each verse is noted here as marked on the facsimile images. These XML files will be released soon under a Creative Commons license. The transcriptions I try to represent the orthography and the original forms of the manuscript more closely than Gibson's edition. And I also note the rare occasions where I disagree with Gibson's edition, where it overlaps in Ephesians 1 to 2 verse 9. I only looked at sections from the Synaxarion in the 2 lectionaries. Those are these particular days from the weeks after Pentecost. And I hope that many more insights will be gained through studying the metalogion of these manuscripts, but that will await further study. So looking at the relationships between these manuscripts, Zaki has described the tradition as having 3 recensions. First, A, represented by S155, and B, represented by S73, and C, represented by 159 and 160. So the first one from the 9th century, B from the 10th century, and then the 13th and late 12th and 13th century manuscripts. These relationships shouldn't be thought simply as a linear progression in time. Zaki's theme can be interpreted stematologically, as you can see here in figure 1, where I've marked R as the position of the 3 recensions, as she calls them. So in this picture, we need to add the other 10th century manuscript that was not included in her study, S436, as well as the two lectionaries from the 13th century. Now, full stematological study of this version is required, but that's out of the scope for this paper. So in lieu of that, here is a distance matrix showing the Levenstein edit distance from each manuscript to the other. So you can see the low numbers mean fewer, and also divide by the number of verses, because the number of verses in the comparison is different, because some of the lectionaries, it doesn't cover all of Ephesians. So this is the average number of changes per verse. I see the light colors here are small changes per verse, and the darker colors are quite a lot of changes per verse. Because now this distance matrix can be used for phylogenetic analysis by using the ordinary least squares approach And I use the FastME phylogenetic software package to do that. The resulting tree is down here. So at this, from this tree, Sino-Arabic 155 stands on its own in the tradition. And the common ancestor of the rest of the tradition is what I would certainly call a recension. So let's go over here. I definitely call this a recension because there's a significant editorial work that happens at this point. The changing of words to synonyms, substantial corrections to the Byzantine text, and other changes to the grammar. Now there's now Sino-Arabic 773 derives from this recension, but there's a lot of changes. It has its own idiosyncrasies and a lot of editorial process along this particular branch. So it's not necessarily representative of this particular recension. From this stemma, it looks like Sino-Arabic 163, that's one of the 13th century lectionaries, branches off at a different point to the other lectionary 148. So this needs further study, but if this stemma is accurate, then this would indicate that what the suspicion was correct, that these do perhaps refer to come from two different compilations of the ESK lectionary from the same version. Now this tree is compatible with Zaki's early observations, except that now there's other manuscripts in the stemma between S73 and 159 and 160. As she noted, 159 and 160 extremely close together. You can see here they only average about 1 character difference per verse, and they're paired quite closely together in the stemma. So my thoughts would be to reserve the term recension for the major editorial activity happening at this point that produced the common answer to all witnesses except for S155. And subsequent to that, we see ordinary scribal transmission with some manuscripts being closer than others. Well, to compare this version, which Zaki calls Arab GR1, so I'll call it that from now on. To compare Arab GR1 with the rest of the manuscripts of the Pauline corpus, we need to have a collation of readings. My co-author Joey McCollum has produced a collation of Ephesians for his doctoral thesis at the Australian Catholic University. His TEI XML collation expands the dataset of the Greek manuscripts transcribed by ITSI by including additional Byzantine manuscripts and versional and patristic witnesses. It partitions the text of Ephesians into 840 segments, of which 682 feature more than one substantive variation of variant reading. After filtering out fragmentary witnesses that are extant in fewer than 840 variation units, the data set consists of 159 Greek witnesses, 21 versional witnesses in Latin, Syriac, Coptic, and Gothic, and 10 patristic witnesses. To perform phylogenetic analysis of the textual tradition represented by this TEI XML collation, we must convert it to an input format suitable for phylogenetic software. To do this, we use TIFI, the TIFI software package which we wrote for this purpose. For this study, we convert the collation to input from BEAST2, a Bayesian phylogenetic software package, although input formats for other software packages like Mr. Bayes are also supported. At each variation unit in this edition, at this collation, McCollum assigns relative weights to the different variant readings based on intrinsic probabilities for the earliest reading. He justifies these decisions in his textual commentary of Ephesians, which is a major component of his dissertation. These weightings serve as the prior probabilities for the variant readings whenever a candidate stemma is assessed. He's also assigned various categories for the transitions between readings at each variation unit. The transition categories have corresponding rate parameters, which are estimated as part of the phylogenetic analysis. It's beyond the scope of the paper today. I don't want to speak about all the details of the phylogenetic study. It's also, actually, I'll talk about that in a minute. It's beyond the scope of this paper to present a full collation of Arab GR1 with the full number of variation units. So instead, we present a subset of the McCollum's variation units that correspond to the UBS Greek New Testament apparatus. We provide major readings at these locations and the reconstructed text of the archetype of Arab GR1 and the list of Arab GR1 witnesses that agree with the reading and disagree. We also write notes on the Arab GR1 text and the plausible Greek readings that could have resulted in the Arabic. These are presented in textual form in the print version of this paper, and we'll release this as a TEI XML apparatus. And this can form a supplement for the commonly used UVS apparatus to show the kinds of Arabic readings that could have plausibly resulted in this Arabic version. But this is just 36 variation units, and it's not enough to resolve the location of Arab GR1 in the phylogenetic tree. So for this reason, we present the results of phylogenetic analysis on a fuller collation, which uses automatic determinations of the plausible readings for the Arabic from a tool that I developed called Vorlage LLM. So Vorlage LLM is a retrieval augmented generation pipeline, or RAG pipeline, that uses large language models. I presented this software package at the 2024 Society for New Testament Studies conference. It determines the Greek Vorlage candidate readings by comparing the translation patterns across multiple examples. It takes a TEI XML apparatus as input here. That's the source apparatus and also the text that you're wanting to collate with that apparatus as input. And for each variation unit, it uses an LLM to determine the plausible Vorlage readings. And it's able to take into account translation technique because for each reading, the pipeline first performs a semantic search using vector embeddings to find similar words, phrases, and grammatical constructions elsewhere in the corpus. And these to up to 20 examples are included in the prompt as examples to help the LLM use that, and asks the LLM to take these examples into consideration when it's making its decisions about which readings were the plausible source of the document that you've given it. Vorlage LLM is able to ensemble the results of multiple LLM models from different vendors. By ensembling the results of OpenAI's GPT 4.0 and Claude 3.5 Sonnet, Vorlage LLM was able to reconstruct the Textus Receptus from the King James Version with 98% sensitivity. And it was able to reconstruct the Textus Receptus from the Smith and Van Dyke Arabic New Testament with 99% sensitivity. For this study, we used GPT 4.0 and Claude 3.7 Sonnet. This was able to make determinations for the Arabic readings for the 629 variation units, which didn't concern transpositions or omissions of smaller variation units. Now, I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to go a little bit quicker. We'll just get to, this is the result of the collation. So in the 36, in the UVS readings, we found 14 Byzantine readings and 10 non-Byzantine ones, and 12 were ambiguous. Then the full one, where you include the results of Vorlage LLM, we get 57 non-Byzantine readings, 62 Byzantine ones, and a whole lot that are ambiguous. Partly because Vorlage LLM is very conservative with its decisions. If it thinks there's any possibility that that one of the readings could have been a plausible source, it'll include it. And I'll give you some examples at the end of what it's doing there. Now we'll get into the. Now I realise we've got 3 minutes left. I was going to discuss the phylogenetic analysis in detail, but I'll just skip over it. I won't skip over it. I'll go through very quickly. As a standard practice in basic phylogenetic analysis, we made a lot of choices of the models, which I won't talk about. We sampled 100 million hypotheses about the stemmer's shape and parameters. We recorded 1 every 2,000 samples, and then we discarded the first 50% as burn-in, so the remaining 25,000 hypotheses we used in the outputs. These give us a reasonable estimate of the true distribution of the stomata and the parameters. I'm showing here a denser tree format. So with Bayesian phylogenetics, you don't get one single tree. You get a probability distribution of all the trees that weighted according to how probable they are in the posterior distribution. Don't worry if you don't understand that. It's these are all the possible trees weighted by how probable they are according to the model. And we can see here Arabic. Oh, I should have highlighted it there. All right. Well, it's over here. So we can see here it has lots. Oh, it's hard to see. There's lots of lines leading to different points. Now, one of the ways that you can visualize those are all the posterior distribution of trees, which represents the uncertainty in the results. But if you want to simplify it for the sake of interpretability, you convert that to a maximum clade credibility tree, which gives you a single tree with probabilities of each of these particular clades or these groupings of manuscripts, how often they occur in the posterior distribution of the trees that you're getting out of the analysis. So you see here that this particular tree, Arab GR1 agrees with 1962, or they form a pair 16% of the time. Now we went through, there's quite a lot of uncertainty because there's so many ambiguous variants that we gave for Arabic GR1 in the apparatus, so it hops over over all the standard quite a lot. So we looked for which ones were the partners, or which ones were the closest relatives to the Arabic in all the trees. So we found that Cyril of Alexander was next to our Arabic version 40% of the time, 41% of the time. Then there was the tree that I showed you a moment ago with 16%, and then continuing down. And we go into detail about discussing the particular relationships in the paper, but I'll just skip over that now just to get to a couple examples. We've got 25 minutes. Do I need to finish? Do I? Oh, okay. All right. All right. Okay. Well, all right. Let's get to the examples. So I'm just going to go for a few examples just to have a look. Partly just to talk about the Arabic text, talk about the results of four-lager LLM. One of the things I didn't say about four-lager LLM, it gives the LLM gives a justification for the decision that it's made, so that you can go through it, so you can interpret the results that it's giving and critique it and use it as a basis for correcting the results of the automatic results afterwards. So this is one reading from Ephesians 2:21. Here, the earliest text here represented just by Sign Arabic 155 has the article in Arabic, but this is replaced later for meaning every building in the that is removed in the later recension. And to agree with the Byzantine reading, at this variation unit, four-lager LLM was more conservative in its decision than I was, allowing for both readings. The 313, Sign Arabic 73 has been changed to your glory, but in all others, they attest the non-Byzantine reading, our glory. This is one example where changes have occurred along the individual branch leading to S73. Four-lager LLM with Claude Sonnet correctly identified just this second reading, or just this as this reading, but with GPT-4, it also allowed reading 3 with the justification. The personal pronoun doesn't match the Arabic in every exactly, as it uses mu for mine. However, Arabic translations sometimes generalize personal pronouns to fit the context or speaker, hence it's plausible. This is an example how in some LLM models, it's just going to err to the size of portion rather than giving a definitive answer. In this version, the Arabic omits this phrase from the Greek. The original Arabic reading is preserved only in S155 and S436. So you can see here from the stemma, the original reading was preserved here in the blue, which doesn't quite fit the stemma. It would be only way you can explain this from the stemma is if there's some kind of contamination between these branches, or if it's an independent change from this point and from this point. And four-lager LLM agreed with reading 1 as the source of Sign Arabic 155. How are we going? 1 minute? All right, let's go to the conclusion. So this is, in my view, a highly significant Arabic version of the Gospels. Robert Boyd was correct to see its importance for New Testament textual criticism, although he was probably not correct that it was translated from before the rise of Islam. It clearly is clear it derives from a strongly non-Byzantine Greek four-lager. The Melkite Greek Orthodox Church is associated with the Jerusalem Patriarchate, using its own liturgy and lectionary system different to that of Constantinople. Evidently, used a variety of local texts that were different from the Byzantine standard, even in the early Abbasid era, though there are signs of Byzantine influence in the textual transmission after that. Just like for the Gospel versions used by the same churches in Palestine and Sinai, these Arabic versions are an important witness to the biblical texts found in the orbit of Jerusalem in the late first millennium. This version requires more study, and I'm glad we're going to hear another paper about this in a moment. that this version needs a full edition of all books in the Pauline corpus from all surviving manuscripts. I encourage editors of future ECM volumes, where possible, to include it in their collations. I hope that and in the future, as you are able to, find ways to incorporate this Arabic version as well as other Arabic versions into your future text critical research. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob, for your presentation. Any questions? We do have time for a couple of questions.
And Joey's on the line too, if you have. I skipped over a lot of the work about the phylogenetic analysis and a lot of the results. But if you have questions, Joey can help me answer. Yes.
Short question. You focus on the Malachi manuscripts from
Yes.
Sinai.
That's right, for this particular version.
Yeah.
Yeah, this version was used by Malachites from that time period. Yes.
Yeah, it was one. Thanks for your paper. That was great. Good lead into my mind.
Thank you.
Did you do separate analyses, the phylogenetic analysis for each of the manuscripts? Because there's so many differences, and that help me understand as 436 any better.
Yeah, great question. So what I did was, when I was collating them manually, I went through 36 plus then another 15. After that, I explained why in the paper. So I looked at I tried to reconstruct the archetype of the Arabic, and then I used that to go back to collate with the Greek. For the automatic transcription, I used 155 first, and then so that was the base. Then I also did it for S73. So any place where S73 agreed or disagreed with the Byzantine text and it disagreed with 155, I looked at them manually. So that was the extra 15 variation units that I checked manually, and that gave an extra few non-Byzantine readings that were just found in Sign Arabic 73. So that was a result of using the Vorlage LLM to help alert me to those places where the non-Byzantine reading was found in the recension rather than in S155. That's one use of using this automated tool to be able to alert you to things that you can look at without necessarily trusting the results.
Anyone's got one?
Yes.
Yeah, so on the trusting the results, because AI is involved, and all of that, So what role do you still play as the researcher? And it's always how you feed the AI and what instructions you give.
Exactly.
So what is your position on this?
Yeah, I think so. So one of the things with when computers were able to beat humans playing chess, it still wasn't able to beat humans using a computer to play chess. So this is what I see the role as AI and these tools. They're there as assistants to help us make the decisions that we want to make. So how can we automate what can we automate to make our lives easier so that we can look at more evidence but we're the ones that are responsible for the decisions that we make. So how can we use it as a tool to assist us in our decisions? That's one way to think about it.
Any more questions? We have time for one more quick question. Quick answer.
Yes.
There's something interesting going on with the Marstapa Monastery.
Yeah.
Because you have the Leva text to Giant Damascus, which is the commentary of the condensation of Chrysostom.
Yeah.
The original Leva text says in 0150.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yes.
So there's a connection between that and a recension of Chrysostom.
Yeah.
And there seems to be a connection between that revision and 1962 that you
Yes.
have too. It's like a common source of influence.
Yeah.
They're connected to something, but not necessarily one another.
Yeah.
And I'm curious with some of the readings and stuff like that, it's all in the same time period.
That's right, same time period, and so none of these manuscripts were copied there or we don't know about 155. But some of the parallel gospel manuscripts that were used by has the same liturgical system, same liturgical heading, same setting, were copied from that monastery. So these were the kinds of texts that would have been used at that time, in that monastery and surrounding. Exactly.
There's something to be discovered there.
That's right. And so having access to these versions are going to give us more insight into the text in Palestine from 8th and 9th centuries. That's what I'm hoping to draw out.
Well,
Thank
thank you, Rob, and thank you all to Zoom. Ask questions.